Hello, and welcome to
Bell on Earth.
My name is Cassidy,
My name is Casey.
and together we are the Bell Sisters. Join us each week as we corrupt your soul,
And bring you to salvation.
discussing life, death, and everything in between.
Are you afraid of getting into heaven?
Meow meow, motherfuckers, and welcome to Bell on Earth.
The podcast.
My name is Cassidy,
And my name is Casey.
and we are the, Bell Sisters. Coming at you with a new ep.
I mean, we all know that we love pussy and we love bitches. So, what better episode than about the veterinary world?
That was a really good intro.
I know, I thought really hard about it.
Yeah, so we wanted to talk to you about the world of animals
Yeah.
and their care.
And their care. So, some of you probably know, but I work in the veterinary field, so I have the inside scoop.
Shout out to Casey's coworkers who listen to the pod.
Yeah.
We love you.
Shout out Gilbert, honestly, our biggest fan. He's gonna hear this and he's gonna say something to me, so shout out Gilbert.
Thank you for
Yeah. Shout out for
yeah.
That's it.
I was
After
gonna
this all
say
needs
thank
to be
you for
said.
like building our egos, but then my brain stopped working for a second.
Yeah. And my ego's like already pretty big, so.
Yeah. I don't need it to be any bigger.
Oh, I do. I'll keep growing it. But I'm just saying it's already
You're gonna
big.
like water it and feed it until it.
Yeah, take it for walks.
Wow. You're a really good ego mom.
Yeah, I know, thank you.
I think it's because we
I feed it a raw diet.
You're really coming for him out the gate.
Yeah, here we are.
All right, well, Casey, I think you need to start us off.
I guess so. So I guess a little bit of my background just for reference, I suppose. I have worked with animals for quite a while now. I started out doing like doggy daycare, like dog handling stuff, and then I was a kennel technician back in New York. And then once I moved out here to Austin is when I started my technician career. I started out just like in general practice, and then I moved to doing surgical technician work, and now I do kind of like urgent care work. So I've seen a lot, I've heard a lot, I've felt a lot, and honestly, where do I even start?
I don't know.
I don't know where to start, but I'm just gonna start somewhere. I feel like the biggest problem that people complain about in like the veterinary world is like the prices.
Yeah.
And I think this is like a really big deal. And I think like something that I've heard from like people that I've worked with, and from people just in general, from like other pet owners and yada yada, is the whole concept of like, is it unethical to own a pet that you can't afford? And here's my opinion about this. I think it's a little bit different. Obviously, it's hard to be like yes or no, right? Because everything's complicated, everything's nuanced. And when it comes to children, people will talk about the same concept, the same argument.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit different with humans because obviously, like, you know, you're like the one creating it. Like there obviously are children up for adoption, but it's like less common for you to like go to a shelter and like adopt a child than it is like a pet. Like no one's like birthing animals, at least as far as I'm aware. But like with children, you know, it's more of your choice, it's more of your responsibility, and obviously, especially right now and especially depending on where you live, yes, having access to like abortions and other reproductive health care is increasingly difficult, increasingly more complicated. You know, if you don't even fucking catch your pregnancy in time, like even that's an issue, even if you have access to it where you are, like it's a big problem. But to some extent you have more of the ability to like make that decision for yourself. You know, if you're not in the right spot financially, mentally, emotionally, like, it's more on you if you're having your child or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is definitely a discussion that took over Twitter, like, really hardcore, not so far back.
Yeah.
Basically saying that, like, it's eugenics to tell poor people not to have kids, which I don't know if I agree with that. But
it's complicated.
I do agree that it's complicated. I agree that there's so many different sides to it. But I do think that it's a huge difference from adopting a dog and adopting or, like, having a child.
Right.
But I also think that when it comes to animals, it gets a little bit more complicated. I guess this can happen with kids too, but there's a lot more, like, laws and regulations. Yeah. But I just feel like when it comes to animals, it's a lot easier to, like, be saddled with one unexpectedly. At least, I don't know, that's happened to us.
Yeah.
Whereas with a child, like, there's more legalities to it, and, like, there's different things that go on with that. And, of course, like, it can happen, like, you know, the parents die, or they just leave, and, like, the older sibling has to take care of it, or, I don't know, like, an aunt or a friend or something can happen. But I do feel like with dogs and cats and animals and stuff, that happens far more often because it's so much easier to just abandon an animal and you don't have any legal repercussions to abandoning an animal. Like, there's no one really cares. Yeah. And so then, like, if you're really disgusting and sad, but whatever. Yeah, and so if you're a decent person, then you just kind of have animals, and it's like, well, I love the animals, but I didn't really sign up for this, and I'm not in the financial position to take care of them, and that can be really difficult.
Yeah, and, like, the other part is that the shelters are so overcrowded and overrun right now, and, like, you know, you want those animals to find good homes and to find, like, places to go and not have to be in the fucking shelter their entire life, because that's also, like, miserable. That's also, like, a horrible existence to have.
Yeah.
But then it's like, so you want people to clear out the shelters and then completely, like, outprice them from, like, actually taking care of their pet. And then these animals, you know, it's not even, like, always the owner's fault, but, like, these owners can't properly care for their pet. The pet doesn't get, like, the proper care that they need when they're sick and stuff like that. And it causes other issues. They don't get, like, the surgeries that they need, and they get, like, put down, or they get surrendered, and they go back to the fucking shelter.
Yeah. Have you also heard about this? I was listening to a podcast not so long ago where they were talking about how shelters basically are just, like, I don't know what, like, they're supposed to be, but they basically won't give people animals, and you have to be, like, very specific. I don't know if that's, like, a local thing. I think the people that we're talking about were from California, but they were saying that, like, they basically were being barred from, like, adopting pets from shelters. Like, there is this one girl.
Interesting. And
she went to a shelter, and, like, they were like, yeah, you can't adopt a cat because your answer to what happens after you die was wrong. And because she had put down, like, they had in the application, which is kind of crazy to me that they would even ask that, but the question was what would happen if you died and, like, couldn't, or, no, I'm sorry. The question was what would happen to make you give up your pet? And her answer was death. Like, the only way I'd give up a pet would be dying. And they said, well, that's a bad answer because who's going to take, like, you don't have a plan after you die for someone to take after your pet.
I mean, I'd hope that someone would know that I was dead.
But it's also, like...
And know that I had a pet.
That's, like, a long answer to put on an application. Like, yeah, of course I might have. But then it's also, like, where does it stop, right? Like, well, my mom would take care of it after I died. But then, like, what if my mom dies? And, well, my sister would take care of it after it dies. And, well, what if she dies?
What
and,
if
like,
the entire fucking universe implodes? What the fuck happens to Scruffy?
That's what I'm saying. Like, well, like, what answer would be correct in that scenario?
Right.
Where, like, death is a good answer, not for nothing.
That's, like, the best answer.
But, like, she literally put on the application, there's no way I would willingly give up my animal unless I died.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, that's a plan. Like, she's not planning on dying.
Right. I mean, maybe. Maybe that's why they were concerned. They're like, where's your fucking suicide note? Does it have the plans in it? For your pet? Or just for you?
Like, in my will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They need, like, proof of the will.
Yeah, like that's like what you need
That's
now
part
to
of your
adopt
application.
an animal is like where your animals will go if you die.
Wow.
And I'm
I
like,
haven't
that's
heard of
crazy.
that, but that is crazy.
And that's why people are going back to breeders because they literally can't adopt from shelters. And I think that's kind of gross. And maybe this is just like a California thing or whatever. I don't know that I've heard anyone with this experience. Like,
Yeah.
I got my dog pretty easily. But I mean, I also knew the people there, so.
Yeah, I definitely haven't heard of that. I don't like think it's a lie per se. I'm sure there is like some shelter out there. And that is really ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's like, girl, like, you're not gonna let people adopt animals, like, unless they live in, like, a shack that's full of meth needles, then, you don't use needles for meth, but whatever, like, I mean, you can, I guess.
You could.
Yeah,
You
you can.
absolutely could.
But either way, like, if it's really that bad, then fine, whatever. But, like, I don't really see the problem with someone adopting an animal and giving them a home.
Yeah.
Like, again, the pricing on veterinary care is quite expensive, but it is kind of this catch-22 of, like, well, I'd like to see this animal in a good home, even if it's quite expensive for them. If the animal did get hurt, they can still provide, like, the love and care that this animal deserves, right?
Right, absolutely. And that's like the problem that I have with, I mean, this is just like a big moral issue to me, and I feel like this is going to come off as very radical, and honestly, like, that's fine by me.
Yeah.
I'm fine for having like a radical view on this, but humans domesticated dogs, and to an extent cats. Cats aren't like fully domesticated, but they're like, some breeds
I thought they
are.
domesticated themselves.
See, cats were like domesticated and then like not, and then like again domesticated, and yeah, they kind of like did domesticate themselves because they are like, it's more of like a symbiotic relationship with humans versus like a dependency.
Right.
Because like they are considered an invasive species living outside, because they're really bad for the fucking wildlife, like really bad. But anyway, besides the point. But like regardless, like cats can survive, most cat breeds can survive like fine outdoors. But like, could you imagine like a pug trying to fucking survive? And like, they cannot. They literally cannot. They can't even survive in an air-conditioned room.
Yeah. Yeah, pugs are pretty bad.
Yeah. And, like, a lot of brachycephalic breeds, which if you don't know, brachycephalic are, like, the squish-faced ones. But, like, a lot of brachycephalic breeds, like, literally cannot even survive properly by themselves. Like, there are countries that have bans against those breeds because they're such, like, genetic fuck-ups.
Yeah.
And, like, we're gonna sit here and act like it's not our moral responsibility as humans to take care of these animals that we created.
Yeah.
Like, that's why, like, I don't care if I sound radical, but, like, as humans, I think that we have the responsibility to care for these animals that we created. They're not natural. You know?
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I don't think I've ever even heard of that type of point of view. But I think it's a
My
really...
brain.
Yeah.
My
But it's
brain's
a
so
really
big.
good point because it's like... That is kind of fucked up to, like, create something and then be like, we're going to charge $3,000 for this dog to get a Band-Aid.
Yeah. And again, like, especially brachycephalic breeds, like, a lot of them need to get certain surgeries, like soft palate and nares surgeries, for them to fucking breathe. And even then, the surgeries are really dangerous. And, like, I've had in past jobs, like, I've had patients who had those surgeries who passed away because it was, like, so harsh and the recovery is really difficult.
Yeah.
And it's like, they need to go through that to literally just exist.
Wow.
Like, there are so many pets that, like, especially in places like here in Texas, like, they'll die outside, even just going for, like, a walk that another regular dog could easily tolerate. Like, in the heat, they will die because they cannot take in the same amount of oxygen.
Yeah. I mean, I know you can't, like, fully stop people, but I just don't understand how it's legal to have dogs like that exist. Because that's, like, purely... I don't know,
kind of
that's
evil.
Disgusting, yeah.
And like people
Like, why would you do that to an animal?
Yeah. And
Just
people will breed
for it
them.
to look ugly? Like, I
And
don't get
people
it.
will buy them for like thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But that's the other problem is that like again, this is not going for everyone, but I feel like a lot of people who do research on dogs and like dog breeds will purposely not get those kinds of breeds because they're
Oh,
like,
yeah, I would
oh,
never.
they're genetically fucked up and they're expensive and like that's not a good idea. But the people who do buy those breeds, who do spend $6,000 on a French bulldog, then are like, I can't afford surgery to actually take care of it. I can't afford to like take care of all these health issues that it has. And like those are the people that are owning these breeds, completely uneducated and like incapable of actually caring for them properly.
It's truly disturbing because it's like not the dog's fault.
No.
And completely the human's fault. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, but like as an owner, like you should know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
That's like, it's very similar to like having a kid and then being like, well, I don't know how to do any of this and I don't really care to.
But that's the thing is that like a lot of people who choose to have children are like that.
They have the same mindset.
Yeah.
And then they'll buy the stupid fucking pug.
Yeah.
Like have a baby and then buy a pug.
Yeah, and like don't know anything about either.
Yeah. No, I honestly will get into this in the future, but I don't know how much I agree that like most people should be parents in general.
But we have plenty of thoughts for another episode about this.
But I also agree that like most people shouldn't be pet owners. And it really should be, I don't know, a lot more like, I don't know, because it's like, well, if you overregulate it, right, then you have people being turned away just because of whatever reason under the sun that you can imagine from getting animals when they could be really, really good owners. And just because someone has money, oftentimes because someone has money, they're usually worse at taking care of their,
Literally.
I'll just say taking care of anything.
Yeah.
They just throw
Even
money at the
themselves.
problem. Yeah. Instead of like actually doing anything to take care of their own animals or whatever else. However, it's also really disturbing and fucking disgusting to have people breeding these dogs into like health problems and then selling them to fucking idiots who have no idea what they're doing. And then you hear about also, this is maybe more extreme, but like the people who hoard animals and that's really gross. And it's just so disturbing to me, like the things that people do just because animals are like a little bit more vulnerable than we are.
Well, that's the problem is that like, you know, obviously there's a lot of corruption in anything, but like animals can't speak for themselves.
Yeah.
So like you have to be the advocate for them. And when people choose to not and choose to just like not care or like not really pay attention, like it becomes a problem because they can't stand up for themselves and like no one's gonna know otherwise. And like on the topic of breeders, I have like mixed feelings about breeding in general because
Yeah, I feel that.
I am not necessarily against ethical breeding in terms of, you know, a lot of dogs were bred to become workers. And I think that's totally fine as long as it's like in a compassionate and ethical way. Like, for example, like German Shepherds, you know, like they're great working dogs if they're treated properly and like in the right circumstances.
Yeah.
You know, because like if you breed good, healthy German Shepherds, like they're great workers, but if they go into like if they fall into the hands of an owner who doesn't know how to take care of them, leaves them in their apartment all day, like these are such high energy dogs.
Yeah. I honestly think that it should be illegal for certain dogs to be living in apartments. Like, I'm sorry, I understand that people like German Shepherds or Border Collies or
Any
of
like
these-
high energy dog.
Yeah, even like Beagles and like Pinchers and stuff like that, like Jack Russell Terriers, like well, any terrier really. But it's just like, girl, like first of all, you're a fucking dumbass. Unless it's something again where you've been saddled with this dog and you didn't necessarily choose it, but like now you have to take care of it. Like fine, that's one thing. we can't control like a circumstance like that. But if you adopt a dog purposefully and you saw them and you love them and you wanted to adopt them, you have to give them the best life possible. Like, and it's so fucked up to adopt a dog that you have done no research about and also do not have the right environment for.
Yeah.
Like, that's so fucked up. And of course, like, realistically, like, I would love personally to give my dog a lot more space to run around and stuff like that, but he's also like fine being in an apartment, like as long as I do the work to make sure that he's fine being in an apartment, because he's like kind of middle energy, I'd say. But like I would never adopt a German Shepherd living in an apartment building that has no yard. Like that is gross. Like growing up, as we said in the last episode, we did have a German Shepherd, but we also had a giant fucking yard.
And like
where he
a
could
full
run around.
family where someone was usually home.
Yeah, and we often took them out for walks, stuff like that.
Motherfucker lived to what, like 18?
Yeah, exactly. But like you see these fucking dogs who are like tearing up apartments and like acting insane, and then you're like, why is my dog so bad? And it's like, because you're literally a bad owner.
And then they also won't train their dogs properly either.
Yeah.
Well, this is the problem, is that like it's so complicated, and I'm sure some people have heard about I forgot where, but like somewhere in the UK they did ban certain breeds like pit bulls and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I also have mixed feelings about this.
I think there's a couple countries that have banned pit bulls.
They have.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that like that was the most recent one that I saw, so it was like kind of like big news.
Gotcha.
But I think it's really complicated because let's start with the topic of like pit bulls, right? They can be the best fucking dogs ever. They can be so sweet, so kind, like so gentle. But what were they created for? Fighting.
I thought they were created to hunt rats.
Pit bulls were developed for blood sports such as bull baiting, bear baiting, and later dog fighting.
Really? Mm-hmm. Oh my god, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And I'm sure there are some, like, because, you know, there's so many fucking breeds out there. Like, some, like, variations were bred for other things, like hunting, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, pit bulls, at least, like, more recently, were certainly bred for blood sports. And were bred and continue to be bred for, like, used as bait.
Yeah.
In fights. And is that the dog's fault? Absolutely not. However, if someone is going to do some shit like that, what breed do you think they're going to get?
Yeah.
And what breed is meant for something like that? And, like, that's where it becomes complicated, because pit bulls can be really dangerous if they're not in the right hands. And again, is that, like, the dog's fault per se? No, it's, like, the owner. However, like, banning a breed is not going to stop people from doing that. If anything, it's just going to create a black market for it.
Right.
And that's why, like, yes, like, in theory, bans and, like, limitations and stuff are a great idea. However, like, how well do they actually work?
Yeah. That's, like, so sick and twisted. I can't, like, imagine. I mean, like, I know, like, of course, that dogfighting exists and stuff. I just can't imagine being such an evil human being that that's entertaining to you.
And that you, like, purposely go out of your way to breed dogs for some shit like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just disgusting.
Yeah, people are horrible.
Like, I don't know, like, back in, like, the olden days when they had, like, what is it called? When, like, the people are, like, fighting against each other. Like, medieval shit.
The Colosseum? Well, that's
the place.
Jousting?
Sure. Well, even, like, back then, they did do stuff with animals. Like, humans have always been shitty.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, that's the problem, is that, like, humans have always been and always will be shitty. And, like, I say that as a blanket statement, obviously, because there are also, like, a lot of really great people who exist and who have existed and who have, you know, bred dogs for, like, great and, like, purposeful reasons and have treated them great. But at the same time, like, with anything, this is, like, basically the point of our fucking podcast, is that there's going to be the duality to anything. There's always going to be shitty people, and, like, you cannot stop them.
Yeah.
And so, like...
They're ruthless.
Yeah, it's true. And so, like, that's when it becomes a problem, because, again, like, the people who are going to follow these rules are going to be the good people. Like, the bad people are still not going to follow the rules, regardless of how many fucking rules you put in place. People are still going to breed these dogs. People are still going to use them for fighting. So it's, like, more about how do you go about, like, mitigating that?
Yeah, and that's, I think, brings it back to the topic of prevention. And, of course, like, realistically, I don't know how much we can do that. But I do think that we can train people in empathy, and that mitigates a lot of stuff like that. Yeah. And I think that's part of our issue with society is we literally do not teach people how to be empathetic. And there are some people that can do it naturally, but it is a skill. And, like, you do have to teach someone how to, like, care about other people, especially, like, when they're kids. And the earlier you start, the easier it is to do that. And I do think that, like, in teaching empathy to people, we can find that more people are more willing to care about, like, the lives of other animals that aren't humans, as well as other human beings, because they don't care about those either.
Right. So, like, not only that, but I feel like we are also shown the opposite and almost, like, told to do the opposite. Like, we're constantly pinned against each other and, like, told to hate certain groups of people or people who do this. Or, again, like, even what I'm talking about, like, there are people that I've worked with who will talk shit about owners for not being able to afford care. Yeah. And I'm sorry, but, like, it especially makes me mad when people in the field do it, because we are paid so fucking poorly for the work we do. And, like, most of the treatment plans that I show to people, I couldn't even afford. And so, like, who the fuck am I to talk shit about someone else for not being able to afford proper care?
Yeah.
Like, that is so insane to me.
That is really gross.
Especially, like, how marked up a lot of these treatments are. And especially when you work for, like, a corporation, which a lot of these hospitals are being bought up by corporations. Yeah. And, like, these doctors have to abide by certain things. Like, if it's a family-owned, like, privately owned practice, it's easier to be like, okay, like, we'll, you know, like, do this for free. But, like, when you work for a corporation, like, you can't really do that. Otherwise, you fucking get fired or you lose your license. Like, it's a big deal. You know, and a lot of the times with, like, corporations, it's run by people who aren't doctors. And then the doctors will be under the people who actually run it, and they won't get heard. Like, I'm not going to name names, obviously, but I used to work for a company who was under a bigger corporation, and these doctors would be saying every fucking day, like, this is too much, we have too many patients, like, we can't give them the quality of care that they deserve. And yet the head, like, the regional directors and shit would be like, you're not meeting your numbers.
That's like,
and it's like, bro, like, so the doctors who have their license on the line are telling you it's too much and they're not practicing up to their ability, and you're still condemning them? That's disgusting. And that, like, literally doesn't make sense. Like, at that point, what's the fucking point of being a doctor? What's the point of going to school if, like, you can't even make your own choices for yourself and for your patients?
Well, it's also like, what's even the point of providing care, because you're just going to reject everyone anyway.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And it's really gross because, like, you know, they're told to make certain numbers, but, like, maybe there's some places that do, but, like, from what I've seen, like, the doctors aren't, like, making commission off of these patients. Yeah. You know, like, yeah, they'll maybe every once in a while get, like, a bonus for, like, doing good work or whatever it is. Right. Or, like, they'll be able to stay in the company and, like, be rewarded for it. But, like, it just makes me sad when, like, doctors and technicians are forced to almost, like, attempt to manipulate owners into feeling bad about not being able to do certain treatments just because they have to meet their own, like, numbers and goals and stuff like that.
And it's like
that's the opposite of what the field even is supposed to be about.
Right. Like, it's like, how are you here's my problem with that, is that, like, the more you make your numbers or meet numbers or exceed numbers, that means that there's more and more people or animals patients, right? There's more and more who are sick and injured and not doing okay. And that's really disgusting because it's like, why do you want an unhealthier society, whether it be for human beings or for animals? Like, why would you want that?
Yeah.
That's gross.
Which this is
Like,
another
just so you
one
can
of
make
my...
your bottom line and, like, exceed the amount that you should be making as a CEO or as a board member.
Well, that's the other thing, is that it's always the higher-ups who are making the actual money.
Yeah.
Like, none of us, like, technicians, and, like, you know, like, some doctors make decent money, but, like, not what they even should be making in terms of, like, how much goes to the higher-ups.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, who is even benefiting besides the people who aren't even doing the actual work?
Right. And
which is disgusting.
This is a little bit off topic, but I have been seeing a lot of content recently on how inflated CEO salaries are literally what's destroying the economy right now.
Yeah.
And, like, you see that particularly in cases where it's, like, the veterinary industry or the healthcare industry or social service industry, stuff like that, where it's a necessary industry that you need to have people in because people are going to get sick, people are going to get hurt, people are going to need services. You could also speak about this in the prison industry, right? Like, there are going to be people who do crime, stuff like that, but you're creating more problems so that you can make more money. And that's, like, literally what you're doing. Like, you're withholding care so that these dogs can get sicker and sicker and sicker, and then the owners have to pay more money to get a surgery over just having, like, stitches or whatever it is because you inflated these prices so high that they couldn't do that. But now it's gotten to the point where it's so bad that it's like, well, I can either lose my dog, which also costs a shit ton of money to put a dog down, or I can pay this exorbitant amount of money for this surgery and just pay it off over time because I guess that's the only choice that I have, which is so fucking disturbing and weird. And it's weird that we don't talk about that more because it's not just happening in veterinary care, it's happening across the board.
Oh, yeah.
In every single industry in the world basically right now, right? Like, you see all of these workers being underpaid, staffed, not given any type of resources, not being given proper benefits, and then you also see, like, patients or shoppers being mistreated as well because it's like, well, they're being told misinformation. And then being forced to mark up the things that they're purchasing, which is so gross because it's like you're literally just taking and taking and taking, and it's like, where is it going? Like, it's not going back into the economy. That's the thing, is that, like, you have these CEOs with these inflated salaries, and that money is not going back into the economy. You're not paying anyone to actually spend money. On top of that, you also are rejecting people from having care, so it's like, well, now you're losing patients because they're fucking dying.
Yeah.
That was a long rant, but it's just so sickening to me that, like, everything is about fucking money, and it's like, I shouldn't have to worry about how much fucking money I have in my bank. I should just have to worry about if my dog is gonna be okay or not.
Yep.
You know? Like, I shouldn't have to worry about that. I shouldn't have to worry if my kid is gonna come out wrong. And then I have to pay a shit ton of money to, like, keep this kid alive. And not, like, wrong as in, like, to be ableist or whatever. But you know what I mean? Like, it fucking sucks if your kid has some sort of disability or medical condition and then you have to pay exorbitant amounts of money to keep them fucking alive.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the case.
No, absolutely not.
And it's the same with, like, my animals. Like, my animals shouldn't have to, like, have their life risked just because you want to make more money.
Well, that's, like, the insane thing is that, like, you see it and people talk about it in, like, human healthcare. But, again, I'm not going to name names, but a company that I've worked for in the past would always have us write out scripts for certain prescription dog food brands.
Yeah.
And be like, you know, like the only way to treat this is by having them on this certain prescription food, which is always super fucking expensive. But guess who owns these prescription brand food? The same company that I worked for. Mm-hmm. Because it's all like one corporation, and then like everything is branched out under it.
Right.
So like really, like listen, I think in some ways like those larger companies can fund a lot of research, and that's great, but how biased is that research?
Right. Exactly.
You
exactly.
know?
Yeah.
And that's the scary thing, is that like even being in the medical field, like you don't even know, because like half the time the textbooks that you're learning from are also owned by the same fucking companies.
And it's the same exact thing in human healthcare.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
I think it's exacerbated in veterinary care because people don't care as much.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, whereas I feel like in human healthcare, that's also a thing, but it's hidden a little bit more because if people found out about that, then they would, I mean, you would think they'd be rioting in the street, which I don't understand how, like, more people are not mad about this. But that's the exact same thing. I literally have seen it. I worked in a hospital for, like, 3 months, and I left because it was horrible. But I saw it, and that's part of the reason I left was because they were doing the exact same thing where they just prescribe, like, bullshit stuff and make more money off of you being prescribed whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Like, maybe it wasn't necessarily, like, you know, vet recommended dog food in like a hospital, but it's still the same shit.
That'd be a little sus.
Yeah.
If they were feeding
Honestly,
patients dog food.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Although it kind of be better than the hospital food there. Let's be honest. Mm-hmm. I feel like the hospital food like basically is dog food.
But it basically is. And that's something that always pissed me off because that was what I did in the hospital was I like worked in the food section or like the kitchen or whatever, and like they aren't being like fed proper diets to actually help them get any better,
which is insane because like nutrition is half of your fucking health.
Yeah.
But then it also creates that issue of like mistrust with it, like between the clients and the veterinary team, because now like these owners, like I've dealt with so many hostile owners, and like I understand it to some extent, you know, because like there are a lot of times when we are forced to like offer them things that aren't even like really that necessary. Then these people again are just like assuming that we're just trying to take their fucking money, which again we get paid hi Marty.
And it's hard because it's like you are, but it's not like you're the one making anything. And I think that's where a lot of people get mistaken.
Right.
Is they think that, like, for some reason, people really think that people of all different professions get paid way more than they actually do.
Or that, like, it's my fucking fault.
Right. Like, can we all just come to terms with the fact that basically no worker gets paid correctly unless they are a CEO?
Or, like, honestly, sometimes people in, like, the tech industry who get paid, like, hundreds of thousands of dollars for, like, 3 hours of work.
Right. Literally,
but that's besides
outside of that, most workers are not getting paid properly.
But especially, like, the people who are considered essential workers.
Yes. They are paid way below.
Which is fucking insane.
Yeah. What other people are paid. Like, you can make more money working in a restaurant.
Yeah.
Which is... And I've worked in restaurants before. I've worked in the food and beverage industry for a long time. It's a hard job. And I think people should get paid a fair wage. But, like, realistically, when lives are on the line, like, I'm sorry, like, a life isn't really on the line, like, unless I serve them peanuts and they have a nut allergy.
A severe allergy.
But
or I
it's
guess
not
if
my
like,
problem to take
and you
care
give them
of
an
it.
Alcoholic drink.
I've done that before. By accident.
Oh my god. Was it by accident, though? Spill the tea.
I did on there.
You're just like, this bitch is really ugly. We don't need more of her.
Yeah, that was my prerogative.
You're like an extra shot.
Yeah, basically. We don't need this child.
No, there's too many.
But yeah, so like, yes, you could like potentially like fuck up someone's order, but
that's different.
Also, it's not my job to take care of them if I fuck up. Like, that's an EMT's job, and the EMTs are getting paid less than I do as a server.
Yeah, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah. That's what
Absolutely
I'm saying.
insane.
Like, it's ridiculous to have to sit here and be like, people who, like, cut others open should be paid more. But, like, that's what we have to fucking fight for.
Well, that's the thing, is that people love to use that argument of, like, oh, well, EMTs only make this, like, why should, like, someone at Burger King make the same amount? And it's like, but that's the problem, is that why is anyone making this amount?
Well, it's also like, why
can't anyone make a living wage?
Why can't an EMT make like $30, $40, $50 an hour?
Yeah.
They should be. They should be making more money. And it also should be harder to get the role of EMT. That's why, like, part of it is, like, kind of fucked up, because it's also, like, and you've seen this in the veterinary industry as well, depending on where we've lived, stuff like that. But ultimately, like, because they're so low paying, basically anyone can go into these types of jobs who are not qualified, don't actually care, are not, like, trained properly, and are going to jobs and have no idea what they're doing.
And, like, the other thing, because there's so many fucking layers to this, and yes, this 100% happens in the veterinary world, and, like, now there's a whole shortage of technicians. Like, this is what we're dealing with right now, unfortunately, is that a lot of the 24-hour facilities are not 24 hours anymore. They'll be, like, Sunday to Thursday, because they don't have the proper staff to care for the patients, so they literally just have to shut down.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm sorry, but there are especially in Austin, this is, like, mainly what I'm going to talk about, like, Austin, because that's what I know the best, but, like, there are so many clinics in Austin, and they just keep opening up more and spreading themselves so thin, and it's like, we don't need 30 different clinics. We need not a couple, but, like, a good amount, enough for, like, the caseload, and we need, like, quality pay and quality care.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of ridiculous.
Exactly.
And, like, another big thing in the veterinary world, which it's either, like, one of the top or, like, the top industry that has, like, the highest rates of suicide.
I can believe
that. And it's known that the
Mm-hmm.
veterinary industry has, like, one of the highest rates of suicide, to the point that, like, one of the companies that I've worked for, we've had, like, meetings, basically, being like, is everyone okay? Like, does anyone want to kill themselves? All right, here, we're going to put the suicide hotline number on the fridge just in case.
Yeah.
And it's like,
you know what would
we
make
recognize that and, like, still don't fucking care.
Right. But it's like, you know what would make me not want to kill myself? Maybe, like, a
More
decent
money.
pay and, like, more coworkers.
Yeah.
Who can do their jobs correctly.
And again, like, see, this is something that, like, there are certain states that require technicians to be licensed. And listen, I benefited from moving to a state that doesn't require a license, and that's how I got my experience. Do I necessarily think it's, like, a good thing? Like, no. Did I benefit from it? Yeah, so, like, there's that. However, like, the first technician job that I had, I was there for, I don't think it was even a full year at that point, and I was training someone else. Oh, that is insane.
My God.
I was, like, listen, I try to do my best to, like, learn properly, but, like, even the people that I was learning from are not licensed technicians.
Yeah.
So, like, were there some things that were obviously, like, correct? Yeah, but, like, are there other things that probably weren't entirely correct, or were there better ways to do it? Absolutely. And, like, at my current job, we are part of the Free program, which, like, it's a whole, like, separate entity, but it's the whole concept of, like, the veterinary world, like, veterinary visits don't have to be, like, traumatic for pets. And so, like, there are certain ways of handling patients and, like, using, like, snackies and stuff and, like, having pheromones in the room, which I really like. I think it's a really great movement that's going on. However, I've also worked at clinics where it was regular, daily fucking basis shit to be tackling dogs to the ground while they're fucking screaming just for a nail trim. And that is absolutely insane. And, like, to an extent, like, I wasn't making it any better because I was so severely compassion fatigued, which is a really big thing in the veterinary world, which is a massive problem. And, like, there were so many times where, like, I had to take a break from the veterinary world for a little bit because there were times when I'd be standing there, like, doing shit, and I was like, I know that I should feel bad, but I don't. Mm-hmm. And that made me feel so disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, that made me feel so fucking disgusting. And obviously, like, I would never, like, abuse animals. But, like, I also, like, listen, it's a stressful job. And there are going to be days that are better than others. There are days going to be, like, that are worse than others. You know, like, it is what it is. That's with anything. However, when I'm at a job where every single shift, I would go to my car and cry. Like,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
That's a huge problem.
That's a massive problem.
And, like, shit like that's normalized, too, which is so disturbing to me.
Okay, I'm sorry, but the veterinary world is so overrun by alcoholics. And it makes sense. And, like, again, like, it's hard because obviously, yeah, it's, like, fucked up. But, like, I don't even, like, blame people.
Yeah.
Because we need technicians, but, like, these people are so overworked and, like, so unappreciated. And, like, I'm sorry. I get so annoyed when people accuse us of, like, not caring about the animals. Because no one's gonna, unless you're, like, literally insane, like, no one's going to enter the veterinary field where we get low pay, shitty hours, like, trampled all over by everyone if we didn't, like, love what we do and love the patients and, like, love seeing these cases through.
Right.
Like, most people, 99% of the technicians and doctors and managers that I have worked with, even when they're completely compassion fatigued, like, they care about what they do, and they're there because they want to be.
Yeah.
And it's really sad.
I've said this a couple times, but any job where you are working with a vulnerable population, whether it be animals, kids, the elderly, the disabled, whatever, most of those people are either going to be, there's only two types of people, there's no in between whatsoever. They're either the kindest fucking people that you've ever met, the most compassionate, the most empathetic, greatest people you've ever met, or they are legitimately evil. Yeah.
Yep.
And they have no compassion, they have no desire to actually help, they just want power and control.
Oh, yeah.
And it's crazy. But, I mean, like you said, especially in the veterinary world, I think that sort of changes in different industries, like how much of either person you'll get. But I do believe in the veterinary world that the majority of people truly do care about animals and are just really great people.
Yeah.
But they have their hands tied in so many different situations where it's like, not only are they not allowed to care, but they literally don't have, like, the energy anymore to care because they have so much on their fucking plates.
Yeah. And I will say from my experience, like, most of the people in the veterinary world, again, even when they're just overworked, they are really good people and they do really care. And I think there's something about animals in particular that, like, okay.
They're so special, man.
They are. And, like, it's really interesting because I don't care if people think I'm fucking crazy for this shit, but, like, I mean, being in a field with so much gore, like, you kind of have to be okay with it. But, like, I'm the kind of person where, like, no, I don't like to, like, see people hurt necessarily, but, like, I think gore in itself is really fascinating. And I've gone on plenty of, like, gore sites just because of curiosity. And it's so interesting because most posts, people are fine with, like, human injuries. Kids, a little bit more sensitive. But if you post a video of an animal being injured without a, like, trigger warning, people get mad. Mm-hmm. And these are on gore sites where, like, you're going for the gore. Mm-hmm. But if there's a video where there's, like, a person that gets hurt and then there's an animal that gets hurt and you don't put, like, an animal warning on it, all of the comments are like, come on, man. Like, why would you do, like, I don't want to see that shit. And it's like, we're fine with, like, watching someone be beheaded, but an animal breaking their leg is too far. And I think that's, like, one of the really interesting things about humans and humanity.
Yeah, that is really fascinating.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like, do you know that documentary, Don't Fuck with Cats?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love
just
that.
like that.
Shout out that documentary. That was a really good one.
Mm-hmm. It was a really good one, but it's true. Like, you can't, it's a completely different thing because, like, similar to children, but I think even a little bit more so, like, they just don't have any capacity to know what's going on, or to like run away, or to like understand that they're in a situation that they need to like get out of.
And like really, I mean, obviously depends on the animal, but like defend themselves too, especially if it's like a smaller animal.
Yeah, of course, like most animals do have some type of defense mechanism outside of like literally alpacas, but even still, it's like,
shout out alpacas.
They literally don't have a defense system. Their defense system is to die.
Yeah.
Same.
Good for them.
Yeah. Really.
Sometimes that is the option.
Yeah. True. But you know, like, again, like, you know, dogs have teeth and cats have claws and teeth.
Of course.
Stuff.
And like,
but it's still like they just don't have that same capacity to like they just don't have that capacity to understand like that this is like not a good situation.
Well, that's the thing that I think people get upset about, is the fact that like humans do have the capability to understand, and like, I don't know, I think there are, have we talked about this on Since the Rebirth? I think this was in one of like the older episodes. But like there are just going to be people who are like sociopaths, who are just plain incapable of empathy and like being nice. You know?
Yeah.
And I haven't, I guess, done enough research to know if this exists in the animal world too. Honestly, I kind of presume that there are. However, it's different.
I think honestly, animals are just more neutral.
Yes.
To be honest, like
that was my.
I don't know that animals exist in like evil or good. I mean, there's definitely good things and maybe evil things that animals do, and I think that would be really interesting to research, right?
Yeah.
Like, you do have, like, killer whales who do understand what they're doing and how they're doing it and stuff like that. Or you have elephants who understand, like, the concept of social justice and stuff like that.
And even death, they have, like, funerals for some of their, like, passing members.
Yeah, and so it's like, could there potentially be like sociopathic animals? Sure, I'm sure that there are, but I also think that inherently animals tend to just be more neutral. Like, they don't really do things out of good or bad intentions because they don't necessarily have intentions. They just kind of exist and survive, and they do things because they like want things to be a certain way, right? Like, they attack an animal because they're hungry.
Right.
Or they attack an animal for defense, or they attack an animal for territory. But it's not necessarily like, I don't like your Gucci belt, I'm gonna attack you, or you're too gay, I'm gonna attack you. You know what I mean? Like, they don't really care.
Not fluffy enough.
Yeah, like,
Die,
they don't
bitch.
do stupid shit like that, where it's like they have like a motive. So it's just kind of more of a neutral thing compared
Although
to
it
humans.
is interesting because there are some animals that they have said will, like, I think it was like dolphins or something, will like play with other animals and like kill them for fun, basically. Which I do wonder if it's like the more intelligent the animal is, like the more susceptible they are to like those type of tendencies.
I wouldn't be surprised. You know, but like also our cat growing up did that too. She would play with mice.
I mean, she was smart, so that would make sense.
Yeah, she was a gang leader.
She was a gang leader, as we talked about.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if there was... If there was, like, psychopathic tendencies in animals. I just don't know that it's been studied enough.
I do think that, like, part of it... you know, like, I'm sure some people will be like, oh, well, like, there are dogs that are just crazy aggressive. Number one, it, like, depends on upbringing. And also, like, I think it's also important to note that some animals will have aggressive tendencies because of, like, trauma. And I'm talking about, like, head trauma and, like, brain tumors and stuff, because that will absolutely affect behavior. And, you know, if an animal becomes aggressive, like, most of the time they're not going to fucking, like, do testing, especially if it's, like, out in the wild. Sure, like, certain, like, personally owned pets, they'll do like a necropsy on if like an animal, besides like rabies maybe for like testing, but like most of the time, like, you're not gonna like really look into what happened. You're just gonna like kill the animal and move on.
Right.
And I think that's an important thing to, like, also remember is that, like, that can absolutely affect your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
absolutely.
we
we see that in human beings, too.
Exactly.
And we don't, like, put them down most of the time.
I mean, sometimes we should.
Yeah.
But, like, that, actually, this goes into one another topics that I wanted to talk about is kill shelters. Because there are so many differing opinions about kill shelters. And once again, this is a sensitive and complicated topic because there are some people who are like, no kill shelters are the only way to go. Like, it's completely morally wrong and unethical to put any animal down. However, I, like, don't entirely agree with that. I think, and again, this, like, also has to do with the fact that a lot of shelters are very overcrowded. But there are some dogs, and some cats, I guess, too, but, like, this mainly happens to dogs, I feel. But there are some dogs who, like, are just way too aggressive and really shouldn't be adopted out. And there are some dogs who are just way too sick and stuff like that. And, like, there are a couple rescues that, like, I've kind of worked with in the past at, like, certain jobs who will keep, I'm sorry, but, like, wasting resources that could be used for other patients just to, like, try to make an animal survive something that even if they do survive, they're probably not going to have a good quality of life about.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's where it becomes complicated. And, like, honestly, euthanasia is the one thing people love to be like, oh my god, like, isn't, like, euthanasia the worst part about working in animal care? No, honestly, it's one of the best things because,
oh my god, what a crazy take.
But, like, I fucking stand by it because I love the fact that I don't have to keep putting an animal through misery. I love the fact that there's a humane way to take them out of their suffering and that it's normalized too. Like, there is assisted suicide that's legal in some states for humans, but, like, how often is that fucking used? How many people actually, like, will go to the extent to do something like that? And, like, how many people think that that's unethical?
Yeah.
To the point that, like, it becomes, like, not marginalized, that's not the right word. It becomes something that, like, what is the word I'm looking for?
Criminalized?
I mean, sure, and that's not the word I was looking for, but I guess we can use that.
Right.
But, like, euthanasia is something that, like, yeah, obviously it's really sad when any animal dies. However, like, I would rather do it in a safe, happy, humane way than have to, like, send someone home to, like, let their dog just fucking sit in its bed and, like, die on its own.
Yeah.
Or, like, if an animal is, again, like, there are so many times when there are animals who are just, like, injured beyond, like, the ability to save them. And even if you do save them, like, what quality of life are they really gonna have? Mm-hmm. And honestly, like, even, like, the rescues, yeah, like, some of them can have, like, decent lives in, like, sanctuaries or partnered with the right people and stuff like that, but, like, not always. And, like, there are so many other animals who could have a better quality of life, and, like, now these resources are being taken away from them.
Yeah.
Like, it's complicated, and, like, there's so much gray area with it. So much gray area.
Yeah.
But in
It's
terms
very
of, like,
case by case.
absolutely. But in terms of, like, kill shelters, like, that's one of the big things for some of, like, the biggest shelters in Austin is that they're, like, no kill. But, like, how ethical really is it? Honestly.
Yeah.
Like, how ethical is it to force an animal to be confined in a dirty fucking kennel for its entire life?
And also, like, to turn away people who, like, find animals on the street or can't, like, take care of them. Yeah, I don't know. It's very difficult because it's, like, now you're getting into the territory of, like, well, what about healthy, strong animals who are then being put down?
That's when I disagree. I don't agree with, like, the healthy animals being taken down. I don't think there should be, like, just a list and, like, well, now we have a new one coming in. Like, the end of the list has to be fucking killed. Like, I think that's bullshit. However, like, again, what I'm saying, like, there are certain animals that are just not going to have a good quality of life. And at that point, like, why just make them suffer?
Yeah.
If there's no point.
Agreed.
And again, there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of, like, differing opinions of, like, the morality and ethics of it. But that's my take on it.
You know, and, like, I think that's a good point. Like, I don't know. I personally, if I were in a position where I was so beaten up that I was just going to be in pain every day, I'd want to be taken out. Like, there's no way. I'm not going to sit here and live in pain. Like, do I live in mental torture every day? Yeah. But, like, can I get through it? Most of the time.
Most of the time.
But if I was going to be, like, also in physical pain, like, what's the point?
Yeah.
And so it's, like, as murky as it can get, and I also do think that that can be oftentimes abused as well. I do see your point, and I agree with you in terms of the fact that certain, like, circumstances, in certain circumstances, being euthanized is kind of the best option.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And again, I think something like that is where you can have, like, laws and rules and regulations so that you can avoid the situations where, like we're saying, like, healthy dogs who could easily go to a home. You don't want it abused, of course. But, like, there's ways to go about it. And it's never going to be perfect. But, like, there are ways to go about it for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And this kind of goes into one of my other radical opinions. Is that I personally believe, going along with the idea that, like, humans have the responsibility because we domesticated them, I also think that there should be universal health care for animals and for people.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I think healthcare should be, I don't know, I think it should be free for everyone, including animals.
And I think you actually have, like, personal experience seeing this, but there are certain countries like Turkey where they might not have, like, universal healthcare for them per se, but they have, like, better ways of dealing with, like, strays and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, so in Turkey, I know a Turkish veterinarian, and so he is provided with resources and money to take care of strays, because in Turkey, strays are very, very common. There's a lot of stray dogs, a lot of stray cats, and in Turkey, they do have, like, charity-based organizations to, like, provide money and resources for stray animals to get care. And so when someone sees a stray animal that needs help, they'll just have them go to the vet. And when I went to go visit this person, like, they literally had stray animals there, like, recovering from surgery and stuff. Where they either provide their own resources or they didn't have to pay for, like, no one had to pay for it. It was just provided. And I do think that's really great. But I just don't really see why we even, of course charities are really nice. I think charities can be great, but we pay, like, so much. This is one of my radical takes. But we pay so much in taxes. Like, I pay at least $200 a paycheck, and I get paid twice a month, right? Yeah. So that's $400 a month in taxes.
And we're not rich, by the way, so,
yeah,
like, it's a lot for us.
That's, like, a lot of money to get taken out of my paycheck.
To get nothing in return.
To have, to pay, on top of that, my own health care, because I pay for health care. I do get health care through my job, but I have to pay for it. Yeah. I have to pay for Marty's care. I have to pay for my own groceries. I have to pay for my car when my car breaks down, because all of the roads are shitty and there's nails everywhere and there's potholes everywhere and nothing gets fixed. Yeah. I have to pay for the children to basically not eat and not get a good education. Maybe not financially, but I certainly have to pay for it in emotional abuse when people fucking yell at you because they have never been taught how to, like, actually do anything.
Right.
And function as a normal human being. We have to pay for, like, all of these things outside of our own pockets, outside of our own taxes. Yeah. And you're going to sit here and tell me that universal health care doesn't work because you have to pay extra in taxes. I already pay a shit ton in taxes. Yeah. Taxes shouldn't have to go up for me to get health care. We should just be allocating our resources more properly. Yeah. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous that we have now hit, like, $1 trillion in spending.
And yet we'll still send money overseas to, like, fuck up other countries.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, where did that money come from, huh?
Like, the CIA has so much fucking money to destroy people and, like, their fucking government. Yeah. And yet I can't, like, go to the doctor without getting a $4,000 bill just because I had a headache one day.
Yeah.
Or, like, I don't go to the doctor. I literally don't go to the doctor because I, like, am too stressed out about having to pay for it.
Yeah.
Like, that's my number one stress. And, like, I think also a point that you made before is that going to the doctor, going to the vet should not be a stressful experience in the first place. I don't understand. I get that it should be sterile and stuff like that, but it doesn't have to look that way, right? Like, it can be a nice experience and still have, like, you know, the proper medical procedures being done. But also, like, I shouldn't have to be stressed out about how much it's going to cost. Like, that's so disgusting. Like, people are dying and getting sick, and kids are getting hurt because, like, we can't, like, fucking put money in the right place. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Which, like, another big thing is, like, the markups of medication. And I think, like, a point that I respectfully try to get across to some owners, like, when they talk about the cost, is that, like, human medical care is also insanely overpriced and insanely marked up. However, at least people have, like, insurance most of the time. And even then, like, low-key, just, like, don't pay your hospital bills.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. We approve of that. But, like, you can fucking do that because they still have to treat you. But, like, if you go to a veterinary hospital, like, yeah, like, if your pet is really in, like, pain and distress, like, the hospital will eat, like, pain injections and shit like that. Like, they'll eat the cost for that. However, I just remember one specific time where I was looking at a medication that, this is not even, like, a prescription medication. Literally, I found it on Amazon for $17. Do you know how much we like, sold it for?
How much?
$60.
That's insane.
You can go on Amazon and buy the same product for $17, have it shipped to your house.
You should drop the product just so people know what it is.
Should I?
Yeah.
Propectolin.
Fuck it.
You didn't hear that from me, though.
No.
But, like, it really makes me upset when stuff like that happens, and it's like, again, totally understand marking it up a little bit. You have to make money. You have to be able to pay your workers. You have to be able to, like, actually buy the products themselves. Like, you can't just, like, not make money. You know, like, even, like, a private clinic, like, it's still, you still have to, like, make profit, you know?
Right.
But at the same time, like, you can't price people out of care and then be upset when they're, because, like, more people will buy the medications, will pay for the diagnostics, will pay for the care if they could afford it. If you're marking it up so much that people cannot afford it, then, like, you're just losing out yourself.
Yeah.
Which, that's where I don't get it.
And you can mark it up enough where it can still be, like, quote unquote, like, nonprofit, where, like, everyone's making enough to survive, everyone's making enough to, like, have the correct resources and make sure that everything is done correctly and you have, like, the proper equipment, blah, blah. Like, there's literally no reason that we should be marking it up so much, because all of that money is not going to getting the proper equipment. It's not going to getting more resources. It's not going to paying the techs and the doctors. It's literally just going, again, to the CEOs and the board members and the investors. That's the only place where any of this money is fucking going. Because why is medication so marked up and yet everyone's so understaffed and there's no money to bring in more people and we don't have, like, enough PPE, but, like, there's no money for that, but we have to charge $60 for a fucking bottle of pills that you can find on Amazon? Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, that's the thing, is
Where
that, like,
the
this
fuck
happens.
do you think this money's going?
Exactly. And this happens, once again, in, like, human healthcare as well. Like, I remember one of my old doctors, actually, he was telling me about how, I think it was his, like, girlfriend's mother or something like that. She needed a certain medication for, I think it was an antibiotic or something like that. And when she went to the pharmacy to pick it up, it was, like, hundreds of dollars. It was, like, crazy expensive. And whoever she was with, like, her son or something like that, also at some point had to have this medication, and he paid a lot less for the same fucking thing. And he was like, that's kind of bullshit. Like, I paid way less than that. And dead ass, they negotiated with the pharmacist to lower the price. And that is insane to me, that something like an antibiotic that you need is going to be so marked up, but, like, you can negotiate the price down if you just ask.
I didn't know you could do that. I'm gonna do that next time.
Well, you've heard of, like, GoodRx, right?
Oh yeah, I've used GoodRx before.
Yeah. The fact that, like, you can just show them a fucking screen and they'll lower the price, but you can't just be offered that in the first place is disgusting to me.
No, that's happened to me before where I had like an infection, like it was like an ingrown hair or whatever, and it was infected. And so I went to the doctor and they like prescribed me an antibiotic, and I went to the pharmacy and it was like literally out of my price range, like I couldn't afford it. And so I was like, okay, wait 1 second. I went onto GoodRx, not that we're sponsored, but like
We honestly
we
should be.
But I went onto there.
Fans need medications, so.
Yeah, for real. But I went onto there and it was like literally like $20.
Yeah.
Whereas before I literally couldn't afford it. And it wasn't, I mean, I'm just a broke bitch. Like I can't afford whatever.
Like, most Americans are.
Yeah.
Most
but it was
fucking Americans
ridiculous how much money it took off.
Yeah. And again, like, there are certain treatments and certain things that, like, genuinely are just expensive. But, like, there are a lot of medications where they pay, like, 2 cents per pill. And yet it's sold for, like, $100 for like 10 pills.
Well, that's the fight with insulin. Like, the patent for insulin was made for it to be cheap.
Yes.
And now it's literally being sold for, what, $600 a month?
And then you just cross the border to another country and you can actually afford it.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, the product itself is not the problem. It's the markup of it. Which is disgusting, especially when it's something that someone needs to survive.
Yeah. No, it's so gross.
It's so gross. And that's why, like, listen, I understand that no system's ever going to be perfect, but it makes me really mad when people try to argue against universal healthcare because they're like, well, in Canada, the wait times. And I'm like, I would rather wait for 6 hours and get free care than still wait for 6+ hours here in America.
Yeah.
And then be charged like 40 grand for nothing.
Yeah, like there's still exorbitant wait times.
Like, are you kidding?
In America that people like seem to not remember.
Yeah.
But we literally have such extreme wait times and like such horrible healthcare and also like such undertrained and under like qualified staff.
And also, again, like, as we're saying, overworked, compassion fatigued. So, like, even if they are, like, good... Well, there was that case that one time... I forgot, like, her name. But there was some nurse who was fired because... I also have, like, mixed feelings about this, but this is just an example. But she was fired because she was taking out, like, a certain medication. I think this patient... they were supposed to be, like, sedated or something like that for, like, x-rays or whatnot. She ended up drawing the wrong medication, gave it to the patient, left them in the room to, like, have it go through their system, and the patient died because she gave them the wrong medication, because she would basically, like, clicked through, like, alerts that were supposed to be there to stop her from getting the wrong medication, but she was, like, so overworked and fatigued, and, like, the system was already, like, weird and messed up anyway that she just, like, did not even do anything about it. And, like, the patient dies. And, like, listen... there's multiple sides to it, right? Like, obviously, yeah, at some point, like, it is her fucking fault. Like, there were alerts. There were things that were supposed to be put in place. But, like, it also goes to show how easy it is for even qualified people who care about their job to make mistakes because they're overworked and overstretched.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many nurses that have, like, way too many fucking patients and so many rooms. And, like, the same thing, again, with the veterinary technicians. Like, there's so many of us. Like, when I was at one of my old companies, we'd have way too many rooms. And they were all set on, like, the half hour. Which, I'm sorry, but no one fucking shows up on time.
Yeah.
So now this 30-minute appointment, I only have 20 minutes to do it. And not only that, but, like... A couple vaccines and, like, diagnostics for, like, vomiting are going to take different lengths of time. And the fact that, like, that's not taken into account is ridiculous. And then on top of that, we had, like, drop-off patients and stuff like that where we had to get them done throughout the day. And there were times when there were patients that, like, were dropped off at, like, 10 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't even see them until, like, 5 o'clock at night.
Oh my god.
And they're literally just sitting there in their kennel the whole time. And, again, there's a lot of different layers and problems to this, but, like, Do you think I wanted that patient to be sitting there for that whole day? No. But, like, there's nothing that I could do half the time.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, what if this patient was, like, having a seizure in their kennel or something like that, and, like, no one's even checking on them?
Right.
What if,
'Cause
like,
you
something
literally
happened to
don't
the
have
patient
anything.
and no one has fucking time to, like, go and check on them? And that's what scares me, and that's what makes me really sad.
It's really disturbing.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
just sad that, like, again, as we were saying, a whole field that is supposed to be caring for their patients, like, we don't even have the capability to do that, even if we wanted to.
Yeah. I think that's a really good note to leave people off on. Because honestly, I hope that this episode speaks to you and, like, puts a fire in you and makes you realize that things are not okay and that we
Yeah.
deserve better. Our animals
all
deserve,
deserve
better.
better.
Yeah.
We deserve better as employees and as clients and as patients. And just as people.
And it's okay to be angry about that, because the more that we actually are angry and that we stand together, like, things can change.
Yes.
And do I think it's going to be hard to change things? Yeah, because we've been in a certain system for a long time. But I absolutely do believe that we are at a precipice of a big change. And I think that the veterinary industry is a really, really good example of it, but it's going to happen across the board. It has to. We can't keep going like this.
Oh, yeah. There has to be some limit. You know, there has to be, some ceiling where it overflows.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed.
until then,
Keep your pets safe. Keep your bussies open. And bye. Thank you for listening to Bell on Earth, the podcast. We hope that your minds have been expanded and your bussies have been opened.
Be sure to rate and follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Amazon Music.
This podcast is brought to you by Free Studio Productions. It's hosted and produced by Cassidy and Casey Bell. Big thanks to our executive producer, Dark Benton.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for all of your content needs. See you later, haters.